G'day guys, my name's Dave from Guitar Zero to Hero, and in this video I'm going to show you how you can use a foot controller with the Positive Grid Spark amp. Now the Positive Grid Spark doesn't actually have any input jacks for a foot switch, but there is a company called XSonic and they make these Bluetooth foot switches that work with the Positive Grid Spark, and it's actually really cool. Right here I've got the Airstep Lite. There's a few different models. The cheapest version is the Airstep Spark Edition, and that can only control the Positive Grid Spark. The Airstep Lite is a whole lot more customizable and allows you to do a whole wide range of other things. If you want to find out more about it, check out the link in the description below. But let's just take a look at how it can control the Positive Grid Spark amp. Now, first things first, you need to disconnect the app from the amp. The thing with the Positive Grid Spark amp is that it only has one Bluetooth connection for controlling the tones. The second Bluetooth connection is to use the Spark as a music playback device. But if you're connected to the app to control your tones, you can't use the foot switch. So that's why we need to disconnect the app from the amp. So to do that, you'll need to go to the menu here down the bottom right corner, tap on your Spark, and then you're going to go down and tap on Forget this device. And you should tap forget, and that will be that. It'll ask you if you want to forget the Spark 40 audio in settings, but we don't need to forget the audio Bluetooth connection because that is separate from controlling the tones. So the limitation with using the foot switch is that you can't tweak your tones in the app whilst you're using this. Now that we've disconnected the app from the amp, all we need to do is turn on the Airstep and we're pretty much good to go. What will happen is it will automatically connect to the Bluetooth of your amp. With the Airstep Lite, you will need to download the app on your phone or tablet device and configure the Spark settings onto the Airstep Lite. But with the Airstep Spark Edition, you'll just plug and play essentially. Now that we've got the Airstep connected to our Spark amp, we can now toggle through our different hardware presets, but also toggle on or off some of the effects. So there's 3 control modes with the Airstep. For control mode number 1, our first 4 buttons correspond to the 4 presets on our Spark. So we've got preset 1, preset 2, preset 3, preset 4. Now let's go back to preset 1. What does this 5th button do? It actually toggles on or off our drive pedal. So on patch number 1, I've got a drive. But if I want to turn it off, it's now clean. Let's put it back on. So it's pretty cool. Moving on to control mode number 2, we now have more control over our effects chain. So our first button's to toggle on or off the drive. Our second button's to toggle on or off modulation. The third button's to toggle on or off delay. This next button is to go channel down, and our 5th button is to go channel up. So we can toggle between our presets with these right 2 buttons and then switch on or off the effects within those presets with these first 3 buttons. So with this preset, let me turn off the drive. Now let me turn off the modulations. Let's hear how it sounds with modulation at the moment. Let's turn off that modulation. And let's turn off the delay. It's just reverb now, there's no delay. Let's turn the delay back on. So you can hear that quite clearly. And let's toggle to our next patch. And our next one. And our next one. Next we get to control mode number 3, which is pretty much the same as control mode number 2, except now our 4th button can toggle on or off the reverb. So let's hear this tone without any changes. And let's turn the delay and reverb off. It's pretty awesome. Let's turn it back on. And that's really cool because up until now, there really was no solution for changing tones or toggling on or off effects hands-free with the Positive Grid Spark. Now, as I mentioned before, there's a few different models of the Airstep. If you just want the most basic version, the Airstep Spark Edition, that's only going to be able to control your Positive Grid Spark. It's not going to be able to do anything else. The Airstep Lite has a lot more functionality, so you can use the app to program it to control things like your digital audio workstation, or to use it as a YouTube looper as well, which is pretty cool. And then there's the full version, which actually has input jacks, so you can plug it into amps, and it just has a whole lot more features. If you want to find out the differences between the models, then I'll leave a link to that in the description below. But overall, it's a really, really cool addition to the Positive Grid Spark, which is already an amazing amp. I will note that the majority of the time it worked really well, but there were a few times where I tried to toggle on or off an effect and it didn't quite register. But again, the majority of the time it worked quite perfectly. And I was actually quite impressed with how easy it was to connect to the Spark. But remember, you cannot control the app and control your tones whilst you're using this pedal. You can use the Spark as a Bluetooth music player whilst you're using this, but you can't tweak your tones in the Spark app. That's just one of the limitations, since the Spark only has those two Bluetooth connections. One for controlling the amp tones and one for music playback. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you want to find out more about this Airstep, then I'll leave a link in the description below. Thanks, and I'll see you guys next time on Guitar Zero to Hero. Cheers.